Welcome to Trans Fabulous. My name is Sasja Sÿdek. My pronouns is she because I will never be her. I am the co-founder of Trans Sisters United, the familiar voice at Queering the Air at 3CR Community Radio, and also the Everybody Eats on Joy Media. I would like to acknowledge the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation, the traditional owners of this land now we call Melbourne. I pay my respect to their elders past, present, and emerging. Always was and always will be Aboriginal land. I also would like to pay my respect to our trans elders past and present. Today, I have trans fabulous Madison Moffat, pronouns she, her, is a trans woman, an ex-Transgender Victoria secretary, co-founder and a facilitator of the TransCreative Network and the founder and editor of a new TGDNB culture community zine, The Trans Creator. Professionally, she is a risk and operational integrity professional. She is a sexual health outreach officer and a peer educator for Thorn Harbour Health. Madison is also the new familiar voice on Queering the Air at 3CR Community Radio. Yay, welcome Madison.
Thank you.
How
Thanks
are
for
you,
having me.
sis?
I'm well.
Being fabulous now that you're on radio, you have
Yes.
a zine just been launched.
Yes.
And
I'm
all the fabulous things that are happening for you.
No, I'm a quintessential media mogul.
Tell us, Madison, you have done a lot especially with the transgender community.
Oh.
Let's start off with Transgender Victoria. What was your role and what did you do? What have you achieved of having that role?
Okay, so I started as a volunteer,
Mm-hmm.
and as part of that, I offered myself as someone who might be able to assist with creating a safe, inclusive and diverse environment for TGDNB workers, volunteers and guests to Transgender Victoria.
Yeah.
And as a result, I became their subcommittee lead for both their diversity and inclusion and their workplace health and safety subcommittees. And then from there, I was given an opportunity to be on the board. So I was on the board for a few years. And I was also briefly the secretary for TGV. Unfortunately, I had to pull away as a result of various other commitments.
Yeah.
But it was all done with, a mutual understanding as to why, and, all rather amicable.
For our viewers, don't know what TGDNB, that stands for transgender and non-binary.
Yeah.
Yeah. A lot of, especially trans people of color, feel like they weren't welcome at TGV, Victoria.
Right.
So I was also wondering if part of the board member, is there any person of color in the part of the board member?
So, it's not for me to, of course, to say whether someone is a person of color. So I did not know of overtly of anyone who was a person of color while I was on the board.
Okay.
I know that diversity of membership was a topic that was discussed on a number of occasions.
I think this topic has been talked about for so long,
Yeah.
till today, and still we haven't seen changes.
Right.
As a person who have been involved in a big organization like this,
Yes.
what do you think? Why are we lacking of that?
Well, I think it's complicated. I think that the nature of the work that's done by some of these organisations involves work that, unfortunately, within wider society, people of colour, people with disability and the like are often starved of opportunities to be involved in that sort of work elsewhere.
Yeah.
So then the organisation is seeking talent out there in the community, and surprise, surprise, the talent that they can find are the people who have been given those opportunities elsewhere. So I think that that's part of it. But I feel that organisations generally in our community could do better to actually take on board and mentor and assist people who have natural talents in this area to develop the formal skills and abilities and capacities. And I don't think that's done enough generally.
Agree. I think it's easy to find anybody and you can teach them, the role that you want them to be. It's not that hard. It's just giving them an opportunity.
And I've also seen people who, have brilliant looking resumes, often have impeccable social media presence and LinkedIn presence. And then when I have worked with them, I haven't seen the value. So there's that inverse, you know. So it's all very well and good trying to find the talent that's already established, but it ain't necessarily so.
When I opened up the new call out for Currying the Air, and you approached me, and one of the other girl approached me, and there's a few others who approached me. I didn't say yes to them.
Yes.
I mean, like, you need to do the training first, and then I'll see if I want you fit for Currying the Air.
Yeah.
But for you and the other person, Shruti, I said yeah because I know you guys are committed.
It's a skill to do this, but one can recognize transferable skills and be a little more imaginative as to this person has had these experiences that are analogous. You know, they're sufficiently similar to what we need that they could transfer those skills into what we need, and you know, and therefore perform within our group and our team in a way that we're looking for. But that's a little harder, and people who are you know, don't want to speak too much out of turn, but people who are in senior positions in some of these organizations are not necessarily well versed in strategic human resource management, you know, and talent attraction and recruitment. These are specialist areas. So if you had someone with a more specialist bent in that area, then you might be able to conduct that kind of, you know, crossover. They have the talent clearly because of, you know, what they've done elsewhere that's not quite the same, but could be transferred. But again, it takes skill and knowledge to be able to do that.
It is. I think also, like I said, the word commitment as well. You don't give these people, you know, a chance. How are they going to experience it? So for me, I always believe in giving people chances. And for me, but today now, I don't care about your resume. I don't care about, you know, what degree you have.
Yes.
I want you to be, you know, a fast learner and commit to what you want to do.
And some of the experiences I've had in some of these organizations has even been in my thoughts the worst, because you'll even find people being recruited on the basis of their celebrity.
Yes.
You know, and that they're a recognized spokesperson out in their community as a result of their celebrity status. And that, again, is not necessarily easily translatable in terms of skills and experience to what a board requires. And so I have seen boards stacked with people who are very vocal out there in the community, but they don't know about corporate governance. Boards are about corporate governance.
I think I like to amplify voices that underrepresented as well.
Well, that's me.
Yeah, exactly. Most of my guests are voices that you never heard, names that you never heard, but they have done a lot in the community.
In the background. Yeah. No,
so
I think
that's why
valuable.
I have this platform, and I said I want to amplify the voices and let the world know, let Australia know who they are and the amazing things that they do.
Well, another thing that I'll share in that spirit, a lot of LGBTIQA plus organisations, in my view, they tend to assume that they're inclusive, and they tend to assume that they're diverse.
Yes.
And why? Well, hey, we're the queer crowd. Of course we're inclusive. And unfortunately, that again doesn't necessarily translate into what the type of organisation that they will create and maintain over time. And some of the most exclusive behaviour that I've seen in organisational life has taken place. I've witnessed it within LGBTIQA plus focused organizations, you know, behavior that you would just never get away with in the corporate world. So again, it ain't necessarily so. And I think some LGBTIQA plus organizations could do very well to A, not assume that they know about corporate governance, and B, not assume that just because they're a queer organization, they're naturally inclusive and don't have to work hard at it.
Nowadays, I think the new generation, they're scared of being cancelled. But come on, you're no one, just like me and everybody else. If you think something is wrong, call it out for it is. Do not stay silent.
I think there's another element here which is a bit of a push and pull. So organizations of the type I'm talking about often do want to continue a close connection with the grassroots community.
Yes.
But they get pulled in all sorts of directions. And one reason is that there is a growing opportunity for funding. But that funding tends to come from state departments, and larger organizations and, corporate funding bodies. And these organisations, if I may say so, they can have a rather gentrifying influence on their beneficiaries.
Yeah.
So when an organisation gets funding from a particular department within the state government, there can be fears and concerns that some of the more grassroots and more radical grassroots fellow organisations could embarrass us in front of our state government funder. And I think that there becomes a bit of a, it's not a conflict necessarily, but it's a push and pull where they need to maintain that funding, but they also need to remain queer. And quite frankly, being queer, and I talk about queer very generally, broad spectrum queer, is a radical position. It's not a mainstream neoliberal position to take. You can be queer and even be conservative, but that's about being one way socio-politically and another way socio-economically, anyway. So from my perspective, what ends up happening is organisations that still very much want to do the same type of even radical work get pulled away from that because the funding they're getting from the state government, for instance, is given to them under very tight rules that often then restrict them from continuing with the more grassroots work, the more radical grassroots work. It prevents them from being able to be as open politically in terms of the statements that they make. Now, sometimes that's because there are very real expectations that you will tone it down. But I think a lot of it is actually just fearful anticipation that if they don't turn it down, they're going to lose that funding. So some of it's real and some of it's imagined.
I agree with you with this. Transistors United is a grassroots organization that founded by me, Rebecca Loveday, and Miss Catalina.
Right.
And now that I handle it on my own, and I'm just fortunate that, I get to collaborate with Transgender Victoria.
Yeah.
I think that was 3 years ago when Mama Alto was the CEO.
Yes.
So I just feel like there was an opportunity there now that trans women of color being, noticed.
Yes.
Because I tried to collaborate in the past, but never happened.
Right.
So from that onwards, we are still an ongoing collaboration, especially with Son Vivian now, the CEO of Transgender Victoria.
Son's great.
Yeah, great person. Transistors United is also a radical, organization. Yes. They never restrict me from saying like, you can't do this.
No.
Yeah.
No. So that's the thing. I think that their community development program does allow them to sponsor activities of organisations that have a more radical bent. And that, I think, is to a certain extent liberating. But the flip side to that is that funding does come from the state government. Without wanting to talk too far out of turn, that does mean, for instance, that they have to make sure that there is a very clear health focus, or public health focus. I don't want to talk in too much detail because I'll probably end up getting it wrong. But I know that there are guidelines.
Yeah, of course.
So I know there is some great community focused work out there that people wanted to give funding to or hoped that funding could be given, but it was outside the scope. So I think that's, again, probably spoken too much out of turn already. But, I think that, and then what happens in response to that is it gets out in the community that, these people didn't get funding and that person didn't. And it's only these types of, these types of projects that get funding. And it's because, there is, when such funding is given to organisations, there are expectations as to where that money will be funneled.
True.
That doesn't necessarily meet the expectations, quite valid, quite natural expectations of the community. So I don't want to sound like an apologist, but, and I reckon, I'll probably be hearing from a few people. But having said that, there is that tension. And so I also feel for those who run these programs.
Let's talk about something fun, something about,
I thought that was fun.
the TransCreator. You are
yes.
co-founder of TransCreator.
Yes.
Can we talk the difference of, you're the co-founder of TransCreator, and also the founder of TransCreator Zine.
That's right. So,
what's the difference?
I'm a co-founder of the TransCreatives.
Creative, sorry.
In as much as very early on, I joined Alex Nichols in conversations around what something that Alex had started could become.
Yeah.
And then that translated eventually into me being the facilitator. So for the last 6-8 months, I've been the facilitator for them.
Yeah.
But there's still been conversations between myself and Alex about those in the background. Right. So that's and the TransCreatives is a group of trans and gender diverse and non-binary people who are interested in writing in some form or another. And we get together every month and we have a set of writing prompts, and we use those prompts to sort of surprise ourselves and each other as to what we can write. I like to think that, and others have sort of agreed with me, particularly after the sessions, that we trick ourselves into realizing that we are actually writers after all. So that's the TransCreatives. And the TransCreator, which is a community zine, is something I founded myself. And I, so therefore I gave myself the grandiose title of managing editor. Yeah. So, why have a simple title when you can have a grandiose one?
Why not?
Why not? And and that zine, amongst other things, takes a lot of the output from the TransCreative sessions, with permission, of course, and sort of publishes the work of TransCreative sessions participants, and a few interviews and other little fun things besides, including a contribution at the launch edition from you, Sasha.
Thank you for having me on the zine. I mean,
most welcome. Thank you for being on it.
I didn't even realize it's going to be a zine because that was last year.
That's
for
right.
the Trans Day of Remembrance.
That's correct.
Yeah, that piece that I wrote. Okay, I want to talk a little bit more about the TransCreator. So the TransCreative.
Yep.
So the TransCreative was established 6 months ago, did you say?
Oh, it was around sometime early 2023.
You did the launch of the Creator Zine. There were a lot of people.
Yes.
I was like, I was so happy for you because usually we create events, we always have this fear of people not turning up.
No, that's right. Yeah.
And I was so happy for you. I was like so proud that, oh my God, Madison have this support from all the trans and gender diverse, non-binary people who came that night.
That's lovely.
Yeah.
What I was particularly happy about was that when these events happen, more often than not, it's the same crowd.
Yeah.
If you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Whereas it's a number of people were commenting, apparently, this came back to me. Somebody shared with me that a number of people were saying that there were plenty of people there that they didn't know. And it certainly wasn't a complaint. It seemed to be something they really appreciated.
Yeah.
They were meeting people who were new to them.
Yes.
So it wasn't the same old crowd, And so as a result, I think that it brought more people together.
TransCreative is always like every month, it's monthly?
That's right.
So okay, you do online and also in person?
Yes, so that's right. We're at the Kathleen Symes Library in real life, and online we're via Zoom. Okay. So anyone that wants to join the Zoom, they contact us through either our email or our Facebook page, and then we provide them with those details.
Even like some of friends who are like English is their second language came to that event, and they were asking, I think they were talking to you and Alex, like, if I want to write something, can I write it in a different language?
Yes, and the answer is yes.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So you guys, if you want to get on, actually there's an opening for the zine too.
That's right. So we're going to have a second edition. It will be released probably in November. So, yeah.
So when is the closing date for people to submit their piece?
Well, I'd say, if one submits their piece by the end of October, then one can safely assume that it's in on time.
Ooh. Yeah. So you can get in touch with me, or you can get in touch with Madison, and I can refer you to Madison. And then, you can ask questions. And if you have a piece ready, Yeah, you can submit, but you have to be trans, gender diverse, and also non-binary to be part of this zine.
Yes, that's right. It is trans for trans. Yeah, that's right.
Trans focus. I mean, I think as we go bigger, I'm pretty sure you want to invite some allies as well, but I think that will be later. The more focus is for our own community.
Well, if anything, for the first edition, I had to make some decisions as to who got to be in that 20 pages and who didn't. So, at the moment, I think we'll have plenty of material just from that strict community. Yeah.
And also, don't worry about grammars or spelling mistakes.
Nope.
They don't care. They want you to be real, authentic piece from you.
Yeah.
As long as we can understand it, that's all matters.
That's the thing. And, we are not, as I said, I think probably 50 times during the launch, because I like to say it, we are not arbiters of taste. We're not interested in that. We're not careerists. We just want to write.
Everyone is a writer.
Everybody.
Are all storytellers. So, when Madison approached me, Madison and Alex approached me to write a piece for last year, Trans Day of Remembrance, I was like, I'm not good with my grammars. I mean, like, my vocab is not that amazing because I know them. They are like the super clever people. I had them on my radio. I was like in awe, like, so articulate. So I'm not that articulate person. So I said, like, but you know what? I'm just going to give it a go. I mean, like, what do I have to lose?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I did.
And what you did was highly articulate and really informative.
Sometimes we are the best, our own enemy.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we always judge ourselves until someone said, like, no, your piece is good.
Yeah. And the flip side to that too is that, this is why we have these writing prompts as part of the TransCreative sessions.
The trainings, yeah.
You don't have to think very much. You just follow the prompt.
Yeah.
And when you follow the prompt, everything comes out.
Yeah.
And you realize, I actually can write. And as a matter of fact, from time to time, I can even surprise myself with what I write.
You are obviously a writer. So you have a book that is part of the anthology of the Twinkle. Was it Twinkle?
Yeah, I was actually on the Influx book. Yes.
That's the one. What was the piece that you wrote about? Is it your mini memoir or? It
was kind of a memoir. Yeah. So the idea was that I wrote about aspects of my childhood and adolescence and young adulthood. And it was about how music played a part in a growing realization that there was something about me that made me different in terms of gender and couldn't really put a finger on it, including in young adulthood.
Yeah.
But the songs are it's almost like the songs that I use as examples within the story, it's almost like pop culture is trying to give me clues. And so that's basically, what I wrote.
Do you think you ever have your own book, publish your own book one day?
Maybe, but I actually find it really interesting, the whole editing side of things. And it's a bit like, what the work that I intend to do with you on 3CR.
Yeah.
I like to talk with people and gather their ideas and present those to others.
Yeah.
So, I want to continue with that with the TransCreator for now.
Yeah.
And I want to also see how that translates to radio.
When you join in Currying the Air, what is who's your target audience and what is your focus?
Okay, so my target audience is broadly transgender, diverse, non-binary people, but perhaps the people that would tune in necessarily because this time Madison is on might be those who are particularly interested in what I refer to as the TGDNB culture, which I'll repeat and I say it like a mantra. It exists, it's valid, it's vital, and the mainstream culture relies on it, not the other way around. Which is part of what I call the TransCreative Manifesto.
Yes.
Which at the zine launch, I was really happy to read that out, that manifesto, and had the whole crowd reading it back to me. So, I feel very deeply about, how we are generating a culture together within community that is vital and critical. you know, and we no longer have to worry about the mainstream.
Yeah.
You know, what we could be doing is creating a culture entirely for ourselves. The mainstream will want a piece of what we're doing.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
and I think that is already happening.
Yeah.
So I think that, you know, that is the key message that I hope I can drive through my editions of Queering the Air, talking with people who are in one way or another engaged in that culture, be it as a producer, be it as a creative, be it as a performer, you know, be it as a writer and a critic, you know, all those and many more. And I want a mixture of guests and pre-recorded interviews, so I can keep things, you know, really well pulsed, so that my listeners are almost exhausted by the time the hour is ended.
All right, Madison. I mean, like I said, you're trans fabulous. This is why you have that seat here. Is
Lovely.
there any advice for the young ones, especially not even young ones, all our transgender, because you know there's some people who start late too.
Yes.
So transition late. So what do you have advice for them? You know, being trans and like yourself, be fabulous like yourself.
Well, I think advice is always people trying to tell others, you know, what worked for them but won't necessarily work for other people. But that aside, if I try to reflect on what I've experienced and what I suppose, only in hindsight perhaps could have done differently, I would have cared less about what others think.
Yes.
You know, and I think that I was tied up with this whole question of legitimacy. And I think there's a number of angles to that. Firstly, in some respects, some people will always think that I'm not legitimate.
Yeah.
You know, and there is nothing I can do about that. You know, and those people I just have to dismiss. And I also, not just them, but the imaginary versions of them that I have in my head, who are often more voluminous and more nasty than the real ones.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
The other element to that is that just engage with people, you know, get out there. The confidence, you know, to be yourself includes the experience of being yourself with others. And that's what I've kind of learnt. And, you know, that is also something I've only learnt relatively recently, after, you know, a good year or so, 2 years of feeling isolated. I realized that the antidote to isolation is engagement. And maybe the other thing I'd say is, particularly for those who might have been of a more corporate bent or of a more conservative social bent, as I have been in the past. Well, not so much. I mean, my politics have always been radical, but my background has been relatively conservative because of my work. You know, don't, whatever you do, don't feel the need to cling on to that.
Yeah.
If being queer is a radical position, then there is a natural radicalism to who you are that, on the other hand, doesn't have to conflict with the sometimes conservative work that you might perform. You know, safety management, environmental management, operational integrity, these are naturally conservative, risk mitigating, risk adverse areas of work, right? The fact that I am trans in no way makes me less reliable, you know, or less sound. And so, but it took so long for me to work that out. So what makes me sound is the fact that I know myself. And that I'm nowhere near as fearful, at least. I won't say I'm fearless, but I'm nowhere near as fearful as I was to just be myself.
Yes, that's it.
And once you do that, that's what makes you sound.
Yeah.
And then that achieved, or, you know, to an extent, it's always a lifelong journey, right?
Yeah.
But that having been mostly achieved, you'll actually discover that as a result, whatever it is that you were doing prior to transitioning need not change or can change to the extent you want.
Agree. 100%. That's a great advice, because you know what? Do not listen to others. You know, listen to yourself. Do what makes you happy. And I always said, if you find your tribe, love them hard. And sisterhood is the biggest and the strongest, you know, organization than any other organization, trust me. So when you find that sisters, yeah, you will have that sisterhood.
So that's what I mean, you know, finding that tribe is part of
Yeah.
being yourself amongst others. And that's how you're going to develop that confidence about yourself.
Thank you so much, Madison, for being
Okay.
on Trans Fabulous, getting to know you even better. I hope this will, we're going to be on Current the Air till we're old age. Thank you so much to our viewers. We'll see you again to the next one.